Was down here all alone in a cabin by himself. Kind of living the dream if you ask me. Now, to get this cargo around, a lot of the time the cargo would come from ships, planes, and trains. This right here is a cargo sled. This is kind of what they would be using. These cargo sleds are a lot more sturdy and heavy. The bottom of it is flat, so you can load it up and it won't sink into the snow. Where this one over here, this is a racing sled. It was used in the Iditarod. It has these two skis on the bottom and that's it. Less friction, you can go a lot faster. Now, how do we want to start this? Okay, so in the 1960s, dog sledding was pretty much wiped out by an invention. Does anyone know what that could be?
Snow machine.
Yep, the snowmobile or snow machine pretty much wiped out any need for dog sledding in 1963, I believe. And there were a lot of mushers that didn't like that. It was just so much easier to fill up the gas tank with gas rather than raise and train 16 dogs and buy a sled. The snowmobile was just a lot easier. Until this guy came around. This was one of those mushers that missed his sport. This guy, Joe Reddington, you guys rode with his some of you rode with his grandson, Robert Reddington. This is his grandpa. Now Joe here, he did not like to see his lifestyle pretty much fade away. So he came up with a 1,000-mile race known as the Iditarod. That is this orange one down here. Starts in Anchorage and ends in Nome, and it is 1,000 miles long. It's a pretty crazy race. It starts in March, and March here in Alaska is it's pretty crazy. It's dark a lot of the time. It's dark, cold, and snowy. Now, you met our dogs. You know they love to run. They actually strive in about -10 to -20 degrees. But if it gets any colder than that, they will be wearing something that looks like this. This is a dog coat. I've seen a few different kinds of dog coats, rain, wind, and this one is for temperature. There's not much to them. It's just got these Velcro bits. You just toss it on top of the dog, and then it just Velcros right under the belly. Since our dogs really do just love to run and run and run, once this is on them, they will just run and run and run, no matter what. They don't care at all. It'll just keep them nice and warm so the cold doesn't affect them at all. Now, typically these dogs are running about 120 miles each day. The race takes about 10 to 12 days, so they run a lot. A lot of the time these dogs kind of wear out a bit. The riders nowadays have ways of fighting the dog fatigue. Each dog will be wearing something that looks like this. This is pretty much like dog underwear. It just goes under everything, right up on that front part of the dog. And you can see this right here. This is a pocket. These pockets are actually for hand warmers. The riders will slip hand warmers in there, and that just rests right on those front shoulders of the dogs. And then when they're running for those long distances, it keeps their joints just nice and loose. Another part of the dog that kind of...
for people too?
Maybe, I don't know. If not, that might be a good idea. So when these dogs are running on this trail, it's frozen snow. It's kind of like sandpaper. So you have to protect the dog's feet. They're pretty good with the cold. So the riders will be tossing these on the dogs. These are dog booties. They're pretty much gloves for your dogs. I'll be handing these out. They are a bit worn, but I promise they're clean.
So you have to train all the dogs with this equipment on.
Yep.
So that they know what to do.
When you guys are done with these, just set them on the benches and I'll pick them up later. So there's not much to these, right? It's just some cloth and this what is this called? Velcro. Yeah. Can't think.
It
So
just covers the pad.
yep, it's
right?
just right
The
up to their
bottom.
ankle. It just protects the feet a lot of the time. If these dogs, like, a lot of the time snow will get bunched up on this and ice up, and it's kind of like running with a rock in your shoe. So they'll actually be changing these out about every hour or so, which means they go through a lot of these dog foods. You got 16 dogs, 4 paws each. You're changing them out every hour or so for about 10 days. You got any guesses on how many dog booties they need?
Not in
Anybody?
our head, right?
Anybody really good at
I
math?
was told there was no math.
I have yet to have
640 a
one.
day.
What was that?
640 a day.
Yeah, Yeah.
So 6,000 for a 10-day
So
race. How do you
it's
carry
not
them with you?
6,000. It's about 2,000 to 3,000 of these dog booties they'll be bringing. Now you had a good question. How do you fit 3,000 dog booties in this sled? You can't. You just can't. With the dog food, the dog booties, and your food, it'll be piled like this high, and that's just impractical. So throughout the race, they have these checkpoints. That's the dog prints. Now these checkpoints, they have dog booties, food for the riders, and also dog food. The dog food are just in these bags. They'll just ship it out to the checkpoints beforehand, and then you pick it up. And you're only required to carry 3 days worth of dog food in the sled, and that's just in case anything goes wrong. It just looks like this. I believe this. Yeah, this is Robert's. Robert. So also at these checkpoints, they have volunteer veterinarians. These vets will just be checking up on the dogs because I mentioned earlier their joints kind of wear out in their paws. Sometimes the dogs just don't make it. If your dog is tired and you don't think it'll make it through the race, you can drop it off at this checkpoint. The vets will take care of your dog, and when you finish the race, they will ship it back home, wherever home is for the dogs, to the kennel or whatnot. Every dog will get taken care of. You start with 16 dogs, and you can drop all the way down to 6 dogs. If you go below 6, you're out of the race. Just
How many dogs do people typically finish with?
Everybody's a little bit different, but they'll drop down to like 8, 6, 8. Like I believe in 2019, Robert's brother won the Iditarod, or I don't know if it was 2019, I'm not sure on the year. But he had a strategy to intentionally drop his dogs throughout the race, and he started with 16 and dropped down to 6 intentionally. And this just saved time on the booty change and feeding dogs to race, so you're just trying to cut time. Now, since it is negative 20 degrees out, the dogs need a coat, so do the riders, right? These riders will be wearing something that looks like this. It's just a heavy-duty coat, keep you nice and toasty. Robert told me he saw negative 57 one time, and this will keep you nice and warm. It's filled with goose feathers, and this hood here is a little bit special. It's actually coyote fur. This coyote fur has a metal wire in it, and it just allows the riders to just wrap it around your face, and it'll kind of stay there. And then when you're going upwind a lot of the time and it's snowing, it's kind of like sandpaper on your face, and this will just protect you the best it can. You're just fighting that cold a lot of the time. Now, since the dogs need gloves, the riders do too. These are gloves, they're not oven mitts. A dog got into this one, it looks like. And I'll be handing these gloves out. They're nothing really fancy, they are just heavy-duty gloves. You could just feel free to check them out.
When do they sleep?
They don't. So, that's a good question actually. These riders average about 20 hours of sleep throughout the race. They're not sleeping a lot. It's a race, and that's actually one of the hardest parts about the race, just fighting the sleep fatigue. You want to sleep, but you got another 120 miles ahead of you. It's just a crazy race. But if they do want to sleep, actually, some riders will lay down like this in the sled with their coat. And you could just wrap that over you. They'll sleep like that. Some riders also carry about a 5-pound sleeping bag, and they'll just lay out next to their dogs. Every rider will also lay out hay for their dogs too, so they're not on the snow. And everybody can get the little rest that they do. But along with those gloves, you gotta protect your feet too. If you're from the military, you might recognize these as Mickey Mouse boots. Every rider prefers a little bit different things. These are just heavy-duty boots, and a lot of riders just wear these, and they'll keep your toes nice and warm. You can't get frostbite when you're wearing these things. But some riders prefer a bit of a lighter boot, and when you're wearing a lighter boot, you still need that insulation, so they'll wear these. These are pretty much like gloves for your boots. You just slip your boots in there and wrap it up tight, or these cinch up tight, and then you got insulation around your feet, and you're not getting frostbite. You get frostbite in this race, you're going home. Now, when it's negative 20 out and you've been riding for about 8 hours, 120 miles each day, you want a hot meal, right? These riders will be carrying around this. This is like a kitchen for these guys. It's very simple. The more simple, the less that can go wrong. In their kitchen, they have a pot. In this pot, you'll be melting a lot of snow. There's not a lot of running water. So you're melting snow for you and the dogs. You're cooking your food and also the dog's food. The dog's meals typically consist of just very fatty, anything fat, salmon, beef, beaver. Toss something like that in here with a little bit of that kibble that they have, some water. The dogs don't like a very hot meal, more of a lukewarm. So you can almost imagine the fatty sludge that they'd be eating. But for the dogs, it's like racing fuel. They love it, and it gets them through the race. In order to heat up your meal, these riders will be using something like this. Kind of like a campfire in a can. It's just got that tray at the bottom. Back when the race first started, they'd be starting a fire the old-fashioned way. They'd be putting sticks, chopping wood to get the dry stuff on the inside. In fact, they'd be using an axe like this. Regulation Iditarod sized axe. You can't have it longer, you can't have it shorter. Don't know why. Weird rule. They'll be chopping wood to get that dry stuff in the middle, building a fire. Nowadays, they don't do that. It's a race. They've pretty much been trying to cut time on anything. Nowadays, these riders are carrying around a fluid called heat, H-E-E-T. It's for cars. Some of you might have heard of it. You'll pour a few bottles of that in there. It lights up as soon as it meets a flame, and it will burn just long enough to melt your snow, heat up your meals or the dog's meals. But a lot of these riders, they're not eating a lot themselves. They really just don't take good care of themselves. They'll lose about 10 to 12 pounds throughout the race, actually. It's just crazy. They're actually more snacking a lot of the time. Which brings me to this, a cooler. Why do you need a cooler when it's negative 20 out? This is just to prevent everything from freezing pretty much. The riders will be snacking a lot, and they'll pack their snacks in here. And also dog treats too. Everybody's bringing a few different things. At each checkpoint, you'll pick up another cooler full of these snacks. The rider's snacks typically look like really anything that won't freeze. Chex Mix, cereal, kind of just stuff like that. Everybody's eating different things. Now, these dog snacks, I've seen a few different kinds of dog snacks. I've just seen fat balls, just balls of any kind of fat. Just toss it in. I've seen beaver skulls with the brains in them. It's a little gross, but the dogs get the fat, and it's also like a little toy for them, so it keeps them, it gets the job done. And I've also seen just protein bars. Everybody's packing different things for their dogs. Everybody wants a little secret to win. So they'll be packing their snacks in here. Now, when these riders are standing for 6 to 8 hours every day on a bumpy, snowy trail, a lot of the time they'll toss this cooler on the back of that sled, and they'll sit on it, so then they have a bit of a chair when you're standing for that long. Your legs are kind of, it's like jello, your legs are, it's no fun. Now, here in Alaska, when it's March, and a lot of the time it's snowing, and most of the race happens at nighttime, well, I guess I should say dark. When it's snowing, you can't really tell what's up and what's down, so sometimes you'll have to walk in front of the dogs so they can tell where they're going. These riders will be using snowshoes. They'll just kind of make a trail and lead their dogs along when they can't tell where they're going until they could either get to the next checkpoint or until they give up and just set up camp and wait for the storm to pass or whatnot. Now, along with a foot trail, it's kind of hard to follow that when it's snowing and dark out. These races will be having trail markers. These trail markers are very simple. A lot of the time it's just a post that goes in the ground like this. This post has reflective tape on it. Every rider will be equipped with a headlamp. Pretty much the best one money can buy. I've had them described to me like train lights, just very bright lights. That just allows the riders to see that reflective tape and know where they're going. The other trail markers look like this one here. Just gets pinned to a tree, and it's very reflective as well. And it just allows you to see where you're going when it's dark, and it just helps out a lot. A lot of the time, these trail markers work a little too good. If you have more experienced dogs, they've learned to follow those trail markers. And if they've run these trails before, they know where they're going. You might have been asking yourself, what's with this northern route and this southern route? They actually take this northern route in the even years and this southern route in the odd years. This just helps the riders out a lot. If you got dogs that just want to run and run and run, they know where they're running. They can follow the trail markers. They kind of stop listening a little bit. So you got dogs that stop listening and they just run until they're exhausted. You got exhausted dogs and they won't run when you want them to run. You want your dogs to listen to you the best. So they split up the trail like that just to help the riders out a lot. Yeah.
This is, you have different stops.
Yeah.
This is between the short ones.
So
and
this
the
map,
long ones.
this map actually is a little squished, so that's why these are so close. But every checkpoint is a little bit spaced out differently, just depending on the terrain. But it is 1,000 miles either way you go. In fact, there's a map to scale over here. You could check